Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. Few crime thrillers of the 21st century have captivated readers quite like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. Originally published in Swedish as Män som hatar kvinnor, Men Who Hate Women, the novel became an international sensation, sparking widespread discussion about its dark themes, intricate mystery, and unforgettable characters. Larsson, a journalist and activist, infused the story with his deep concerns about corruption, abuse, and systemic violence, crafting a novel that is both a gripping murder investigation and a scathing critique of power structures. The book's protagonist duo, Mikael Blomkvist, an investigative journalist, and Lisbeth Salander, a brilliant but deeply troubled hacker, are at the heart of this layered mystery. Their unlikely partnership unravels a decades-old disappearance within the powerful Vanger family, exposing a twisted history of secrets, betrayal, and brutality. But beneath the surface, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is more than just a mystery novel. It is a story about trust, resilience, and the battle against oppression. Stieg Larsson's background as a journalist specializing in right-wing extremism and financial scandals deeply influenced the novel. The corruption and misogyny depicted in the book are not merely fictional elements, but reflections of real issues Larsson had investigated. Tragically, Larsson passed away before seeing his work become a global phenomenon, leaving behind a trilogy that continues to resonate with audiences worldwide. In this detailed breakdown, we will explore The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo in depth, unraveling its mystery while analyzing the characters, motivations, and themes that make it such a compelling read. We begin with Mikael Blomkvist, whose fall from grace sets the story in motion. It begins with a mystery, not one of murder or conspiracy, but of a simple yet haunting ritual. Every year on the same day, an aging businessman named Henrik Vanger receives a pressed flower in the mail. The flowers are always different, yet always the same, a silent message from the past, a reminder of something lost, something unresolved. He examines the latest arrival, turning it over in his hands with a mixture of sorrow and obsession. It has been decades since his niece, Harriet Vanger, vanished without a trace, and yet the flowers continue to arrive. He believes, no, he knows, that somewhere in that small, cold world of Hedeby Island, someone is taunting him with the answer to a puzzle he has never been able to solve. Meanwhile, across Sweden and Stockholm, a very different kind of mystery is unfolding. Mikael Blomkvist, a financial journalist and co-founder of Millennium magazine, finds himself at the center of a scandal that threatens to destroy his career. He has just been convicted of libel, the result of a high-stakes legal battle against billionaire industrialist Hans-Erik Wennerström. The trial was brutal, and the verdict is humiliating. He must pay hefty damages, serve a 3-month prison sentence, and perhaps worst of all, endure the collapse of his reputation. Blomkvist had built his career on exposing corporate corruption, but this time he got it wrong, or at least, that's what the court determined. As he leaves the courtroom, the weight of his failure settles over him. He has no choice but to step away from Millennium for a while, allowing his co-editor and occasional lover, Erica Berger, to to hold things together. The magazine itself is now vulnerable, its credibility tarnished. For the first time in his career, Blomkvist is forced to wonder if he has truly been outplayed. What he doesn't yet know is that someone has been watching him, someone with a very different set of skills. Lisbeth Salander is unlike anyone Blomkvist has ever met, though their paths have not yet crossed. A hacker, an investigator, an enigma, she moves through life with a quiet, razor-sharp intelligence that few people recognize and even fewer understand. She works for Milton Security, conducting background checks on clients and subjects alike, and she is very, very good at what she does. Her latest assignment, Mikael Blomkvist, Dirch Frode, a lawyer representing Henrik Vanger, has hired Milton Security to investigate Blomkvist's past before making him an offer. He wants to know what kind of man Blomkvist is, if he's trustworthy, if he's competent, if he's discreet. Salander, using methods that aren't entirely legal, compiles an exhaustive report on the journalist. She uncovers details even Blomkvist himself might not realize are public. But what stands out most to her is his reputation for integrity. Despite the scandal, she finds no evidence that Blomkvist is corrupt or deceitful. He's a man who believes in truth, sometimes to his own detriment. Meanwhile, Blomkvist receives an unexpected call from Frode, inviting him to meet Henrik Vanger. He is hesitant. The last thing he needs is another job, another powerful figure pulling him into something he doesn't fully understand. But curiosity gets the better of him. He travels to Hedeby Island, where Henrik Vanger lays out his proposition: solve the mystery of Harriet Vanger's disappearance. Harriet was 16 when she vanished in 1966. She was last seen at a family gathering on the island, a place that, due to an accident on the bridge, was completely cut off from the mainland that day. There were only a handful of people present, all members of the Vanger family, many of whom despised each other. No body was ever found, no evidence of escape. It was as if Harriet had simply ceased to exist, and yet the flowers, her flowers, keep coming. Henrik is convinced that someone in the family murdered her. He has spent the past 40 years piecing together every detail, but he is no closer to an answer than he was the day she disappeared. Now, as an old man, he wants one last attempt at the truth, and he wants Blomkvist to be the one to find it. At first, Blomkvist is skeptical. He's a journalist, not a detective. He has no reason to believe he can succeed where the police and private investigators have failed. But Henrik Vanger is nothing if not persuasive. He offers Blomkvist a deal: spend a year investigating Harriet's disappearance, and in return, Vanger will provide him with damning evidence against Wennerström, the very thing Blomkvist needs to restore his reputation. It's an offer he can't ignore. As Blomkvist settles into Hedeby Island, he begins sifting through the mountain of documents, interviews, and photographs Henrik has compiled. He feels like he is drowning in information, most of it leading nowhere. The Vanger family itself is a maze of feuds, secrets, and scandals, each member more suspicious than the last. And then, just when he starts to believe the case is impossible, he stumbles upon something. A small, overlooked clue buried in an old photograph of Harriet taken on the day she disappeared. The expression on her face, the way she's looking at something outside the frame, fear. Blomkvist doesn't yet know what Harriet saw that day, but he knows one thing for certain: she was afraid. And that means someone, somewhere, knows exactly what happened to her. Mikael Blomkvist sits in the guest house on Hedeby Island, the silence pressing in around him. Outside, the winter landscape stretches endlessly, a stark contrast to the chaos that has overtaken his life. His conviction in the Wennerström case still lingers in his mind. But here, in this isolated corner of Sweden, he has been given a new mystery, one that is older, colder, and far more personal to the man who has hired him. Harriet Vanger's disappearance isn't just a cold case. It is a wound that Henrik Vanger has nursed for 40 years, an obsession that has consumed his life. Blomkvist has seen obsession before, in the way journalists chase stories, in the way criminals cover their tracks. But this is different. The pressed flowers, the meticulous collection of documents, the unwavering belief that Harriet was murdered by someone within the family. Henrik has lived in the past for so long that Blomkvist wonders if there is any future left for him. But there is one undeniable truth. Someone out there still remembers Harriet. Someone keeps sending those flowers. Someone is watching. Blomkvist begins his investigation the way any journalist would, by following the paper trail. Henrik has given him full access to everything he has collected over the years: police reports, family records, interview transcripts, newspaper clippings. It is an overwhelming amount of information, and for days, Blomkvist does little more than sit in the guest house, reading, taking notes, trying to make sense of the tangled web that is the Vanger family. What quickly becomes clear is that the Vangers are not just any wealthy industrialists. They are a dynasty built on power, and with power comes corruption, rivalries, and secrets that span generations. Henrik himself is one of the few decent ones, at least. That's what Blomkvist gathers from the accounts he reads. Others are less so. Some members of the family have ties to the Nazi movement, a past that many would rather forget. Others have histories of scandal, fraud, or outright violence. It is a family where distrust runs deep, and where nearly everyone had a reason to hate someone else. Blomkvist methodically reconstructs the events of the day Harriet vanished. September 24, 1966, a day that should have been ordinary. There was a family gathering in Hedestad, with most of the Vangers in attendance. But then, a traffic accident on the bridge leading to Hedeby Island cut the area off from the mainland. For several hours, no one could come or go. And in that window of time, Harriet disappeared. The police investigation was exhaustive, but ultimately fruitless. Every possible escape route was considered. Had Harriet run away? Unlikely, her belongings were left behind, and she had shown no signs of planning a departure. Had she fallen into the water and drowned? No body was ever found. Was she kidnapped? If so, how had the kidnapper gotten off the island undetected? And if she was murdered, where was the body? The answer to all these questions remained a mystery. But Henrik Vanger was convinced of one thing: someone in the family had to be responsible. As Blomkvist sifts through the old photographs, one image catches his attention. It is a parade seen in Hedestad, taken the same day Harriet vanished. Among the crowd, Harriet stands at the edge of the frame, her face frozen in an expression that unsettles him. She is looking at something or someone just outside the image, and there, in her eyes, is fear. Blomkvist stares at the photograph for a long time, a feeling of unease creeping over him. What had she seen that day? Who had frightened her? the same time, he begins to immerse himself in the family history, speaking to the remaining members of the Vanger clan. He starts with the oldest, those who remember the day Harriet vanished. They are reluctant to talk. Some dismiss Henrik's obsession as foolish. Others hint at tensions within the family, but refuse to elaborate. There is an unspoken rule here: some things are not meant to be uncovered. One of the first people he interviews is Isabella Vanger, Harriet's mother. She is cold, dismissive, and barely conceals her irritation at being questioned yet again about her daughter's disappearance. She insists that Harriet was troubled, that she was emotional and prone to drama. She suggests that Henrik has wasted his life chasing a ghost. But it is what she doesn't say that catches Blomkvist's attention. The way she deflects certain questions. The way she refuses to speak about certain members of the family. Then there is Martin Vanger, Harriet's older brother and the current CEO of the Vanger Corporation. He is affable, polite, and far more cooperative than Isabella. He acknowledges Henrik's obsession with the case, but expresses sympathy rather than irritation. Still, he has no new information to offer. Harriet's disappearance, he claims, remains as much a mystery to him as to anyone else. Blomkvist continues his research, but progress is slow. He knows that if he is going to get anywhere, he will need help. And that help is about to come from an unexpected source. Back in Stockholm, Lisbeth Salander has completed her investigation into Mikael Blomkvist. She has moved on to other work, but something about Blomkvist lingers in her mind. His downfall in the Wennerström case. It doesn't add up. Salander has a mind that works in patterns, in logic, in details that others overlook. And the details in this case suggest that Blomkvist was set up. One night, unable to shake the curiosity, she does what she does best. She hacks into Wennerström's financial records. What she finds is shocking. There are discrepancies, hidden transactions, trails of money that should not exist. Wennerström isn't just corrupt. He has built his empire on deception, and Blomkvist had been right all along. Salander doesn't contact him, not yet, but she keeps the information stored away, waiting for the right moment. Back on Hedeby Island, Blomkvist feels the frustration of the investigation settling in. He is surrounded by a family of liars, a case with no answers, and a winter that refuses to end. But then, something changes. Late one evening, as he flips through Henrik's old case files, he notices something. A pattern small, insignificant on its own, but undeniable when looked at as a whole. The pressed flowers. The ones that Henrik receives every year. He traces the origins of the flowers, cross-referencing them with different time periods, different locations. And then, realization dawns on him. The flowers didn't just start arriving after Harriet's disappearance. They started before. Blomkvist doesn't know what it means yet, but he knows one thing for certain. The person sending the flowers is someone who knew Harriet. Someone who had a connection to her both before and after she vanished. Someone who is still watching. The days on Hedeby Island pass in a blur of research, interviews, and dead ends. Mikael Blomkvist finds himself slipping deeper into the Vanger family's tangled history. A web of rivalries, grudges, and buried secrets that seem to stretch endlessly into the past. The more he investigates, the more the mystery of Harriet Vanger's disappearance refuses to yield answers. But one detail refuses to leave his mind: the flowers. For 40 years, Henrik Vanger has received a pressed flower on the same date, a silent reminder of his niece's disappearance. And now, Blomkvist realizes something crucial. The flowers weren't just a post-mortem taunt. They started before Harriet vanished. That means whoever is sending them was in her life before she disappeared. The question is, why? Blomkvist starts by compiling a list of people who were close to Harriet in the months leading up to her disappearance. He scours Henrik's records, looking for names that repeat, faces that linger in old photographs. Friends, teachers, servants, family members. But the Vangers are a secretive clan, and for every answer he uncovers, more questions emerge. Harriet was young, beautiful, and intelligent, but she was also troubled. Several witnesses from the time describe a change in her demeanor in the months before she vanished. She had grown more withdrawn, more anxious, as if something was weighing on her. But what? Had she confided in anyone? Had she been afraid of someone? One thing is clear on the day of her disappearance. Harriet was seen watching the parade in Hedestad. The photograph Blomkvist uncovered proves it. And she wasn't just watching, she was frightened. The way her eyes are focused just outside the frame, the way her lips are pressed together, something or someone had unsettled her. Blomkvist needs more information, and he needs help. Back in Stockholm, Lisbeth Salander is dealing with problems of her own. Officially, her work at Milton Security is going smoothly. She has completed her investigation into Blomkvist and moved on to other cases. Unofficially, she has uncovered something that won't let her go, the Wennerström case. Salander doesn't believe in coincidences. When she dug into Wennerström's financial dealings, she found discrepancies. Money moved through shell companies, hidden accounts, transactions that pointed to something much larger than a simple case of corporate fraud. And now she knows that Blomkvist had been onto something real before he was publicly humiliated. He had the truth within his grasp, and someone made sure he lost everything before he could expose it. For most people, this discovery would be interesting. For Salander, it is irresistible. She doesn't contact Blomkvist. Not yet. Instead, she keeps digging, slipping into Wennerström's network unnoticed, gathering evidence that may one day prove useful. She doesn't know why she cares about this particular journalist, only that there's something about the way he got crushed that feels personal. Meanwhile, on Hedeby Island, Blomkvist is preparing for a confrontation. If he is going to get anywhere with the investigation, he needs to start talking to the right people. And one of those people is Anita Vanger, Harriet's cousin, and one of the few members of the family who seem to genuinely care about her. Henrik's records indicate that the two girls were close, more like sisters than cousins. If anyone knows what Harriet was going through before she disappeared, it's Anita. But there's a problem. Anita doesn't live on the island anymore. She moved to London years ago and has rarely been back since. Blomkvist tracks down her number and calls, expecting resistance. Instead, Anita surprises him. She agrees to talk, though her tone is cautious. She remembers Harriet well. She remembers that Harriet was different in the months before she vanished. She was afraid of something, Anita says. I could see it in her eyes. But she wouldn't tell me what it was. Blomkvist presses for details, but Anita has little else to offer. What she does say, however, lingers in his mind. I think she wanted to leave, Anita admits. She told me once that she was thinking about running away, but she never said from what. It's another dead end, or is it? If Harriet had planned to run, then perhaps she had a reason. Something or someone was pushing her to flee. Blomkvist files the conversation away, knowing he will need to return to it later. Then, late one evening, as he combs through old newspaper articles, he comes across something strange. A small detail, barely noticeable, but enough to catch his trained eye. The day after Harriet disappeared, there was a brief mention in the Hedestad Courier of an unknown man seen near the Vanger estate. The sighting was dismissed at the time, just a visitor perhaps, or a worker passing through. But now, with everything Blomkvist knows, it feels significant. He searches through Henrik's records, but finds nothing about this man. No follow-ups, no police interviews, nothing. Whoever he was, he vanished from the investigation as quickly as he appeared. Blomkvist doesn't believe in ghosts. The more he digs, the clearer it becomes. Harriet's disappearance was not a random tragedy. It was planned, calculated. Someone made sure that, on that specific day, when the bridge to the mainland was down and no one could leave or enter, Harriet Vanger was erased. But they didn't erase her memory. They didn't stop the flowers. Which means that whoever did this, they are still watching. Blomkvist is starting to feel the weight of the investigation. He is no closer to solving the mystery, yet he knows he is on the right path. He can feel it. The problem is, he is working alone. And if he is going to make real progress, he needs someone who can see things he cannot. Someone like Lisbeth Salander. Unbeknownst to him, their paths are about to cross. Salander, growing increasingly fixated on the Wennerström case, has continued her own private investigation. She knows that the evidence Blomkvist uncovered was real. She knows he was set up. What she doesn't know is why. One evening, she sits at her laptop, staring at the data she has collected on Wennerström. A name catches her eye. A familiar name, Henrik Vanger. She frowns, double-checking the records. There is no direct connection, nothing obvious, but the name appears in old reports linked to the Vanger Corporation's financial history. And where Henrik Vanger is involved, Mikael Blomkvist is not far behind. Salander doesn't believe in coincidences. She leans back, considering her options. She has no reason to get involved with this journalist again, no reason to dig deeper. But she is Lisbeth Salander, and the moment she sees a puzzle, she has to solve it. She reaches for her phone, and for the first time, she considers calling Mikael Blomkvist. Mikael Blomkvist sits in his guest house on Hedeby Island, staring at the photograph of Harriet Vanger at the parade. The image is old and grainy, but the fear in Harriet's eyes is unmistakable. Someone was watching her that day. Someone made her afraid, and just hours later, she vanished. The more Blomkvist studies the case, the more he realizes that nothing about Harriet's disappearance was random. It was a carefully executed act, one that required planning, opportunity, and knowledge of the island's isolated geography. Whoever was responsible knew the terrain well. They knew how to make someone disappear without a trace, and they might still be watching. Blomkvist has spent weeks going through Henrik Vanger's extensive files, poring over police reports, family histories, and witness statements. The deeper he digs, the more tangled the story becomes. The Vanger family is not just rich and powerful. They are fractured, bitter, and hiding secrets that stretch back decades. He begins assembling a list of people who were on the island the day Harriet disappeared. Some are dead. Others have long since left. But many are still here, living in the shadow of the past. Martin Vanger, Harriet's older brother and the current CEO of the Vanger Corporation, remains one of the most powerful figures in the family. He presents himself as charming and cooperative, always ready to help. But Blomkvist can't shake the feeling that Martin is holding something back. Isabella Vanger, Harriet's mother, is cold and dismissive. She refuses to entertain any more questions about her daughter's disappearance, treating Henrik's obsession as a pathetic waste of time. She insists that Harriet was troubled and suggests that the girl may have run away. Dirch Frode, Henrik's loyal lawyer, has been Blomkvist's main point of contact. He is methodical, precise, and deeply loyal to Henrik, but even he seems reluctant to push too hard when it comes to certain members of the Vanger family. And then there is Anita Vanger, Harriet's cousin, once her closest confidante. She no longer lives in Sweden, having moved to London years ago. When Blomkvist called her, she confirmed something that has been nagging at him. Harriet was afraid before she disappeared. She had hinted that she wanted to leave, but she never said why. The answers are here, buried beneath decades of silence. But Blomkvist is beginning to realize that he may not be able to solve this mystery alone. At the same time, in Stockholm, Lisbeth Salander is growing restless. She has finished her official work for Milton Security, but she can't stop thinking about Mikael Blomkvist. She is not an emotional person. She doesn't form attachments easily. But something about Blomkvist's downfall in the Wennerström case bothers her. She knows, without a doubt, that he was telling the truth. She has seen the financial discrepancies, the hidden accounts, the money laundering operations that prove Wennerström is guilty of everything Blomkvist accused him of. And yet, Wennerström won. Salander hates when the guilty walk free. She hates when the powerful crush those who try to expose them. And she is beginning to think that Mikael Blomkvist may be useful to her. She doesn't contact him. Not yet. Instead, she does what she does best. She starts digging deeper. Back on Hedeby Island, Blomkvist decides to re-examine the police reports, looking for anything that might have been overlooked. As he reads through the witness statements, something catches his attention. A brief mention of a man seen near the Vanger estate on the day Harriet vanished. At the time, the sighting was dismissed as unimportant. The man was never identified, and there was no evidence linking him to the disappearance. But Blomkvist is not convinced. He tracks down the old newspaper article that mentioned the sighting. It is a small, easily overlooked piece, buried deep in the archives of the Hedestad Courier. The description is vague, but it gives him something new, a lead, however small. Blomkvist begins making inquiries, speaking to people who lived on the island at the time. Most remember little, but one elderly resident, an old fisherman who has lived on Hedeby Island his entire life, recalls something strange from that day. There was a car, the man says. A strange car, not from around here. I saw it parked near the bridge just before the accident happened. Blomkvist leans in. You mean before the tanker truck crashed? The fisherman nods. Aye, it was there, and then it was gone. I never saw who was driving it. Blomkvist's mind races. Could this car have something to do with Harriet's disappearance? If someone had planned her murder or her abduction, did they use the accident on the bridge as a distraction? It is speculation, but it is something. That evening, as he sits in his guest house, going over his notes, his phone rings. It is an unknown number, he answers. Is this Mikael Blomkvist? The voice is female, sharp, clipped, with a slight hint of detachment. Yes, he says cautiously. Who is this? A pause, then, "My name is Lisbeth Salander." Blomkvist sits up straighter. He recognizes the name. She is the researcher who compiled the report on him for Milton Security. "What do you want?" he asks. "I have information," she says simply, "on Wennerstrom." Blomkvist's pulse quickens. He has tried to push the Wennerstrom scandal to the back of his mind, but it still haunts him. "Go on," he says. "I've been looking at his financial records," she continues. "Your story was right. You just didn't have enough proof." Blomkvist exhales. He knew it. He always knew it. "What kind of proof do you have?" "The kind you can use," she replies. "But that's not why I called." Blomkvist frowns. "Then why are you calling?" There is another pause, then Salander says, "I think I can help you." Blomkvist is taken aback. "With what?" "Your investigation," she says. "The Vangers, the missing girl." Blomkvist hadn't even considered the possibility of working with Salander. But now, as he sits in his guest house, staring at the files spread before him, he realizes something. He needs her. Lisbeth Salander doesn't think like other people. She sees patterns where others see chaos. She finds answers where others hit dead ends. And right now, that is exactly what he needs. Blomkvist takes a deep breath. "All right," he says finally. "Let's talk." Mikael Blomkvist leans back in his chair, gripping the phone as he processes what Lisbeth Salander has just said. He has spent weeks piecing together fragments of Harriet Vanger's disappearance, feeling the weight of dead ends closing in on him. And now, out of nowhere, this woman, the same researcher who dug into his past for Milton Security, is offering to help. He isn't sure what to make of her. She's an enigma. From what he's read, she's young, fiercely intelligent, and fiercely private. Henrik Vanger's lawyer, Dirch Frode, had vouched for her skills, describing her as the best investigator he had ever worked with. And yet, her reputation is strange. She doesn't work within the system, she works around it. Blomkvist knows he doesn't have time to hesitate. "All right," he says into the phone, his voice steady. "You said you have information on Wennerstrom, but you also mentioned Harriet Vanger. Why?" There's a brief pause on the line, as if Salander is debating how much to reveal. "I looked into you," she says finally. "Your name keeps coming up. The Wennerstrom case, the Vanger case. The connections aren't obvious, but they're there." Blomkvist glances at the files spread across his desk. "What kind of connections?" "Financial," Salander replies. "I found old records linking the Vanger Corporation to some of the same offshore accounts Wennerstrom was using. It doesn't prove anything, but it tells me one thing: you're working on something bigger than you think." Blomkvist exhales, rubbing his temple. He had assumed the Vanger investigation was completely separate from Wennerstrom's corruption. But what if he was wrong? What if there was an overlap? He needs help. And despite how unusual she seems, Salander might be exactly what he's looking for. "All right," he says. "How do you want to do this?" Another pause. Then, in her matter-of-fact tone, she says, "I'll come to Hedeby." Blomkvist blinks. He hadn't expected her to offer that so quickly. "You don't even know what I need help with yet," he says. "I do," Salander says. "You need someone to look at the evidence the way no one else has." "That's what I do." She's right, and they both know it. Blomkvist hesitates for only a moment before saying, "Fine. When can you get here?" "Tomorrow." She hangs up without another word. The next afternoon, Mikael Blomkvist waits on the dock as the ferry arrives from the mainland. The island is quiet, the chill of late autumn settling into the air. He watches as the passengers disembark, scanning for Salander. Then he sees her, She's unlike anyone else on the island. Dressed in a black leather jacket, black jeans, and heavy boots, she moves with an effortless confidence that seems out of place in this remote, quiet world. Her short black hair is uneven, as if she cut it herself, and a silver ring glints from her eyebrow. She carries nothing but a backpack slung over one shoulder. Blomkvist steps forward. Lisbeth Salander. She looks him up and down. Mikael Blomkvist. She doesn't shake his hand, doesn't waste time with pleasantries. Instead, she simply says, "Let's get started." Back at the guest house, Salander wastes no time. She drops her backpack onto the floor and sits at the small wooden table, pulling out a laptop. "What do you have?" she asks. Blomkvist hands her a thick folder. "These are Henrik Vanger's files, police reports, interviews, timelines. I've gone through them a dozen times, but I keep hitting dead ends." Salander doesn't open the folder. Instead, she asks, "What's your theory?" Blomkvist exhales. Harriet was afraid of something. That much is clear. She was last seen at the Hedestad parade, looking frightened. Shortly after that, she vanished. No one could leave or enter the island that day because of the tanker accident on the bridge. That means whoever took her or killed her had to be someone already here. Salander nods, her fingers tapping against her laptop. "And the flowers?" Blomkvist raises an eyebrow. He hadn't mentioned the flowers. "You read the report," he says. "I remember details," she replies. Blomkvist is impressed despite himself. "Yes, someone has been sending Henrik Vanger a pressed flower every year on the anniversary of Harriet's disappearance. The same kind of flowers Harriet used to give him as a gift. He believes it's a taunt." Salander considers this. "Or a message." Blomkvist frowns. "Meaning?" She finally opens the file, flipping through pages at lightning speed. What if the flowers aren't a taunt? What if they're a way of saying Harriet is still alive? Blomkvist stares at her. The idea had crossed his mind before, but he had dismissed it. It seemed impossible. But now, seeing the way Salander's mind works, he realizes he may have been too quick to assume. Salander continues flipping through the files, her eyes scanning faster than seems humanly possible. "These photographs," she says, tapping one of the pages. "The ones taken at the parade. Do you have more?" Blomkvist nods. "Henrik had a collection. They're in a box upstairs." Salander stands. "Show me." An hour later, they sit surrounded by stacks of old photographs, some faded and yellowed with age. Salander has spread them out across the table, carefully arranging them in order. She studies them in silence, her eyes moving back and forth, searching for patterns. Then she stops. "Here," she says, pointing to a photograph taken moments before Harriet disappeared. It shows the parade in full swing, crowds lining the streets. Harriet stands near the curb watching. Blomkvist leans in. "What are we looking at?" Salander doesn't answer right away. Instead, she grabs another photograph, one taken just a few minutes later. She places them side by side. "Look at her," she says. Blomkvist does. Harriet's expression in the first photo is neutral, but in the second, her entire demeanor has changed. Her mouth is slightly open, her body tense. She is looking at something or someone just outside the frame. Salander taps the corner of the second photograph. Whoever she saw is standing here. Blomkvist's pulse quickens. But we don't know who that is. Salander leans back in her chair. "Not yet." Blomkvist exhales, staring at the photographs. This is the first real breakthrough he has had in weeks. For the first time, he feels like he is on the verge of something. He looks at Salander, who is already moving on to the next photograph, her mind working in ways he can't yet understand. "All right," he says. "Let's find out who Harriet saw that day." Mikael Blomkvist watches Lisbeth Salander as she meticulously studies the photographs spread across the wooden table. There's something about the way she works, silent, methodical, relentless. She doesn't just glance at the images, she dissects them, absorbing every detail, every shadow, every minuscule shift in posture or expression. He has worked with many journalists, researchers, and analysts before, but none like her. There's no hesitation, no second guessing. It's as if she is wired differently, her brain running calculations faster than most people can even form a thought. Finally, she looks up. "We need to enhance these," she says. Blomkvist leans forward. "You think there's something there?" Salander taps the photograph with her finger. Harriet sees someone. Her face changes between the two pictures. She's tense, frightened. She points to the edge of the frame. But we can't see what she's looking at. If we can sharpen this, we might get a glimpse of whoever was standing there. Blomkvist hesitates. The photos are old, taken with an analog camera. How much can you really enhance them? Salander smirks slightly. Let's find out. She pulls her laptop closer, connects a portable scanner, and begins digitizing the images. Blomkvist watches as she runs the files through an advanced editing program, adjusting contrasts, sharpening edges, isolating shadows. Within minutes, she has enhanced the images far beyond what he thought possible. "There," she says, pointing to a dark shape on the edge of the second image. "It's blurred, barely distinguishable." Blomkvist squints. "That could be anything." Salander doesn't respond. She continues working, applying layer after layer of refinement. Slowly, something begins to emerge from the shadows, a figure partially obscured, standing just beyond Harriet in the parade crowd. A man. Blomkvist's pulse quickens. "Can you clarify his face?" Salander tries, but the resolution is too poor. The image distorts the more she enhances it. "It's not enough," she mutters. Blomkvist exhales. "But we know someone was there. Someone Harriet reacted to." Salander nods. "We need more photos." Blomkvist leans back, thinking. Henrik Vanger had collected images from multiple sources, newspapers, private albums, even police archives. If there's another angle, another shot of that same moment, they might be able to see this man's face. "Let's check Henrik's archives," he says. That evening, they go to the main house, where Henrik Vanger has kept decades' worth of documents and photographs related to Harriet's disappearance. Henrik, looking more tired than usual, listens intently as they explain their discovery. "You found someone in the picture?" he asks, his eyes sharpening with interest. "We think so," Blomkvist replies, "but we need more photos. Do you have any that were taken from a different angle?" Henrik doesn't hesitate. "Come with me." He leads them to his study, where countless boxes are stacked in meticulous order. Some contain faded police reports. Others contain Harriet's old-school notebooks, birthday cards, and family letters. But what they need is in a separate box, one filled with loose photographs. "These are from various people who were at the parade that day," Henrik explains. "Some were taken by journalists, others by tourists. I gathered every image I could find over the years." Salander immediately starts sorting through the pictures, her eyes scanning them with inhuman speed. Blomkvist follows her lead, sifting through one stack after another. Then, suddenly, Salander stops. "I've got something," she says. She holds up a photo taken from a different angle, a shot of the parade from the opposite side of the street. In the foreground, the marching band is passing by. But in the background, on the sidewalk, Harriet is visible, and standing a few feet away from her is the man. Unlike the previous image, his face is slightly clearer here. It's still not perfect, still partially obscured by motion blur, but this time they can make out some details. A sharp jawline, a high forehead, light-colored hair. Blomkvist exhales slowly. We're getting closer. Salander doesn't say anything. She quickly scans the new image into her laptop and begins working on it, enhancing it frame by frame. Slowly, the man's features sharpen enough to recognize that he is not a stranger. Blomkvist feels a chill run through him as realization dawns. "I know him," he murmurs. Salander glances at him. "Who is he?" Blomkvist swallows hard. "That's Gottfried Vanger." A heavy silence falls over the room. Gottfried Vanger, Henrik's nephew, Harriet's uncle, dead for more than 20 years. Blomkvist turns to Henrik, whose face has gone pale. "You told me Gottfried drowned in 1965. Henrik nods slowly. "That's right. He was an alcoholic. He fell into the lake one night and never came back up." Blomkvist looks at the date printed on the back of the photograph. September 24, 1966. The day Harriet disappeared. "But that's impossible," Henrik says, shaking his head. "If that photo was taken on the day Harriet vanished, then he was already dead for over a year." Blomkvist exchanges a glance with Salander. The implications are staggering. If the date on the photograph is correct, then the man in the image, who looks unmistakably like Gottfried, couldn't be him. But if it's not him, Blomkvist turns back to the photo, studying it more closely. The resemblance is undeniable. But something feels off. Then it clicks. It's not Gottfried. It's someone who looks almost exactly like him. A relative. Blomkvist takes a deep breath. "Martin," he says. Henrik's expression darkens. "My grandson?" Blomkvist nods. "Martin Vanger, Harriet's older brother. The current CEO of the Vanger Corporation." Henrik shakes his head again. "That can't be Martin. Was only in his early 20s back then. Why would he have anything to do with Harriet's disappearance?" Blomkvist has no answer yet. But what he does know is that Martin was there. He was standing near Harriet just moments before she vanished. And whatever happened next, whether she was taken, killed, or managed to escape, it had something to do with him. Salander is still staring at the photograph, her fingers tapping the edge of the laptop. Finally, she speaks. "We need to look into Martin Vanger." The pieces are starting to fall into place. Harriet's disappearance, the flowers sent to Henrik each year, the mysterious figure in the photograph, it all seems to point in one direction. But the closer they get to the truth, the more dangerous their investigation becomes. Blomkvist glances at Salander. She seems unfazed, as if none of this surprises her. He, on the other hand, feels the weight of what they're uncovering pressing down on him. Martin Vanger is a powerful man. If he's involved in Harriet's disappearance, he won't take kindly to them digging into his past. But Blomkvist has come too far to stop now. "We keep going," he says. Salander nods. "Then let's get to work." Mikael Blomkvist leans back in his chair, rubbing his temples as the weight of their discovery settles over him. The photograph, enhanced as much as possible, shows a man who looks eerily like Gottfried Vanger. But it isn't him. It can't be. Gottfried had died a full year before Harriet's disappearance. And yet, standing in the crowd, just feet away from Harriet on the day she vanished, was Martin Vanger, her own brother. Salander watches him with her usual impassive expression, her fingers lightly tapping the edge of her laptop. "We should dig into Martin," she says finally. Blomkvist exhales. "We have to be careful. He's not just some name on a list. He's the head of the Vanger Corporation, and Henrik still trusts him." Salander shrugs. "That doesn't mean he's innocent." Blomkvist nods, but the thought unsettles him. If Martin is involved in Harriet's disappearance, then this investigation is about to get far more dangerous than he ever anticipated. Still, there's no turning back now. They start with public records. Salander, working at an inhuman speed, pulls up Martin's financial history, corporate dealings, and old newspaper clippings. On paper, he is the perfect executive, clean, respectable, no criminal record. He took over the company after Henrik stepped down and has maintained its power for years. But something feels off. Salander frowns at her screen. There's a gap in his records. A period of about 4 years where there's almost nothing, no major financial transactions, no travel records, no media appearances. Blomkvist leans over. When? She scrolls through the data. Between 1965 and 1969, right after Gottfried's death, right after Harriet disappeared. Blomkvist exhales. So what was he doing during those years? Salander doesn't answer. Instead, she hacks into the Vanger Corporation's private employee files, bypassing layers of encryption as effortlessly as if she were opening a locked drawer. Blomkvist watches in fascination. He knows she's breaking at least a dozen laws, but he also knows they won't find the truth any other way. Minutes later, Salander pulls up a document. "There," she says, pointing to the screen. In 1967, Martin Vanger was sent to Zurich for a special corporate training program. The company paid for his stay, but there are no details about what he was actually doing. Blomkvist narrows his eyes. "You think it was a cover?" "Maybe, but it means he wasn't in Hedestad full-time after Harriet vanished. That could be important." Blomkvist runs a hand through his hair. "What about his connection to Gottfried?" Henrik always described Gottfried as a violent drunk. "Do we know what kind of relationship he had with Martin?" Salander types rapidly. "There's not much on paper, but look at this." She pulls up a scanned police report from 1964, just a year before Gottfried died. It's a domestic disturbance call, filed by Isabella Vanger, Martin's mother. Blomkvist skims the report. "She called the police on Gottfried," Salander nods. "It says here that Gottfried was drunk and threatening her. The officers arrived, but no charges were filed. And look at the officer's note at the bottom." Blomkvist reads it aloud. "When officers arrived, Martin Vanger attempted to de-escalate the situation. He seemed frightened of his father." A chill runs through him. "Maybe Martin wasn't just another Vanger businessman," he says. "Maybe he learned things from Gottfried. Maybe worse." Salander's voice is flat. "Abusers don't appear out of nowhere, they learn." The words sit heavily between them. They need to get closer to Martin without raising suspicion. That evening, Blomkvist decides to visit him under the pretense of discussing corporate matters. It's risky, but he needs to get a feel for the man firsthand. Salander doesn't go with him. She prefers to work in the background, hacking into private files from the safety of her apartment. But she gives him a warning before he leaves. "Don't trust him," she says simply. Blomkvist smirks. "I wasn't planning on it." Martin Vanger's house is a modern, pristine structure sitting on a hill overlooking Hedestad. Unlike Henrik's home, which is filled with decades of family history, Martin's place is sleek, impersonal, like a hotel suite designed for efficiency rather than warmth. Martin greets him with a wide smile, offering a firm handshake. He's friendly, charming even. If Blomkvist didn't already suspect him, he might have found him likable. They sit in the spacious living room, and Martin pours them both a drink. So, he says, settling back into his chair, "What's this about, Mikael?" Blomkvist keeps his tone casual. "I've been looking into Harriet's case for Henrik. I wanted to get your perspective." Martin's smile falters just slightly before returning. "Ah, my dear uncle and his obsession." He shakes his head. "I've told him 1,000 times Harriet is gone. Digging up the past won't change that." Blomkvist studies him. "But if there was something we missed, if she didn't just run away," Martin's expression darkens for a brief second, so quick it's almost imperceptible. Then he chuckles. "You sound like Henrik." He takes a sip of his drink. "All right, ask me whatever you like." Blomkvist proceeds carefully, asking about that day in 1966, about the last time he saw Harriet, about his father. Martin answers everything smoothly, as if he's repeated the same script for years. But when Blomkvist casually brings up the old photograph, the one where Martin appears in the parade crowd, something changes. Martin's grip tightens on his glass. Blomkvist pretends not to notice. "It's strange, isn't it?" he says lightly. "We found this image of Harriet from that day, and there you are, just a few feet away from her." Martin recovers quickly, forcing a laugh. "That was a long time ago. I barely remember where I was standing." Blomkvist nods, feigning agreement. "Of course. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we had more angles, we might even see who she was looking at." Martin's expression doesn't change, but there's an almost imperceptible shift in the air between them. He knows. Blomkvist can see it now. Martin knows exactly what happened to Harriet. Martin leans forward, his smile still in place, but there's something unsettling about it now. "Be careful, Mikael," he says softly. "This family has a lot of secrets. Some of them are better left alone." Blomkvist holds his gaze. "Secrets have a way of coming out." Martin chuckles again, but this time it feels more like a warning than a joke. Blomkvist finishes his drink and stands up to leave. Martin shakes his hand, just as firm as before, but there's something colder about it now. As Blomkvist walks back to his cabin, his pulse pounds in his ears. Martin Vanger is hiding something, and now he knows that Blomkvist is looking for it. Mikael Blomkvist is shaken after his encounter with Martin Vanger. The conversation, which was meant to gather more information, only left him with more questions. Martin's carefully controlled demeanor and barely concealed hostility suggest that the Vanger heir is far more involved in the family's dark secrets than anyone could have anticipated. As Blomkvist returns to his cabin, he can't shake the feeling that Martin knows exactly what he's up to and might be willing to go to extreme lengths to keep those secrets buried. The night stretches on, but sleep eludes him. He knows he has to move fast. The stakes have grown too high, and the deeper he digs into the Vanger family's history, the more dangerous it becomes. In the quiet of his cabin, Blomkvist sifts through the notes from his previous investigations, trying to piece together the fragmented puzzle of Harriet Vanger's disappearance. A few key details stand out: the photograph, Martin's erratic behavior, and the sudden disappearance of any solid leads on Gottfried Vanger's death. There's still so much to uncover. As dawn breaks, Blomkvist knows that he needs help. Salander is his only real ally in this twisted web of lies, and he needs her skills to dig deeper. His thoughts return to her, not only because she's the only person capable of finding answers, but because of the bond they've started to form over the course of the investigation. Despite her tendency to keep her emotions hidden behind layers of cold detachment, Blomkvist senses that she is beginning to care about the case. Salander doesn't just want the truth, she wants justice. Blomkvist calls Salander as soon as it's early enough to reach her. He describes the meeting with Martin Vanger in as much detail as possible, emphasizing the moment when Martin seemed to know more than he should about Blomkvist's investigation. Martin's not just a businessman. There's something else going on, something dark, Blomkvist says into the phone. I need your help, Lisbeth. We need to dig deeper into the Vanger's past. I'm convinced that Martin's involved, but we need evidence. Salander's voice is steady, but Blomkvist can tell she's already processing the information. You're right. He's hiding something. I'll go through his financial records again, see if we can link him to anything suspicious. I'll also get into his personal life. There's something about his history that doesn't add up. Blomkvist nods, even though she can't see him. I've already found something strange. Martin wasn't in Hedestad for a few years after Harriet disappeared. But his records don't tell us where he was. We need to figure that out. Got it. Leave it to me, Salander says, and the line clicks off. Blomkvist feels a slight relief. At least he knows she's on it. But as he hangs up, a gnawing feeling returns. The case isn't just about solving Harriet's disappearance anymore. It's about uncovering the entire Vanger family's hidden history, a history of violence, secrets, and buried truths. The next few days are filled with anxious waiting. Blomkvist continues to follow leads, interviewing former employees of the Vanger Corporation and reviewing old family records. But every piece of information leads him in circles. Each revelation only deepens the mystery without bringing him any closer to the truth. He begins to suspect that the Vanger family has been playing a long game, meticulously covering their tracks for decades. Harriet's disappearance might just be the tip of the iceberg. One evening, Blomkvist receives a call from Salander. I found something, she says, her voice tight with urgency. Martin Vanger wasn't just absent from Hedestad during those years. He was in Zurich at the same time as a number of questionable financial transactions involving his father. I think Martin was directly involved in laundering money for some unsavory people. But the real kicker, she pauses, and Blomkvist can hear the sound of typing in the background. Gottfried Vanger was connected to organized crime, specifically trafficking. And there's evidence that Martin might have been involved in it too. Blomkvist's heart skips a beat. This is worse than he had imagined. The Vangers weren't just corrupt businessmen. They were tangled in something far more sinister. Organized crime, are you sure? Blomkvist asks, his voice low. Salander doesn't hesitate. I'm sure. I'm pulling up records right now. But there are connections to money laundering, bribes, and, if I dig deeper, possible murders. Gottfried's death may not have been an accident. The revelation sends a chill through Blomkvist. If Gottfried Vanger's death wasn't an accident, then the entire Vanger family story could be a carefully orchestrated lie. Harriet's disappearance might not be a random event. It might have been part of a much bigger scheme. You need to keep going, Lisbeth, Blomkvist says, determination flooding his voice. If there's a link to organized crime, that changes everything. We have to find the truth. We have to expose the Vangers for what they really are. I'm on it, Salander replies, but I'll need more time. there's a lot to sift through. Blomkvist feels the weight of the case pressing down on him. The stakes have just been raised, and the investigation has become far more dangerous. If the Vangers were involved in organized crime, they would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. Blomkvist begins to realize that he's not just up against the Vanger family anymore. He's up against a criminal network with enough power and influence to bury anyone who threatens it. Blomkvist doesn't sleep that night. Instead, he combs through more of the Vanger family archives, carefully documenting every inconsistency and unexplained gap in the records. He can't shake the feeling that they are on the verge of uncovering something enormous, something that could take down the entire Vanger empire. By the following morning, Salander has compiled a small trove of information. She sends him a detailed email with everything she's found so far, including financial records, connections to organized crime, and a few cryptic entries about an off-the-books company that Martin and Gottfried both seem to have been involved with. Blomkvist pores over the documents, his mind racing. The pieces of the puzzle are slowly coming together, but there's one thing still missing. What was Martin's role in Harriet's disappearance? Was he involved in the trafficking operation, or was he merely covering up his father's crimes? Blomkvist knows he's getting closer, but he also knows the danger is growing. The deeper they dig, the more dangerous the Vangers will become. But there's no turning back now. He's committed to the investigation, and he won't stop until he uncovers the truth. The shadow of the Vanger family looms larger than ever, and Blomkvist is ready to face it head-on. As the investigation intensifies, Blomkvist and Salander move closer to the heart of the Vanger family's darkest secrets. The mystery of Harriet's disappearance begins to unravel, and what was once a simple case becomes a complex web of deceit, corruption, and danger. Blomkvist can't help but wonder how far the Vanger family is willing to go to keep their secrets safe. In the end, the truth may be far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. The case has shifted. No longer is Blomkvist simply looking for a missing person or a tangled family mystery. It's become something far darker and more complex, a criminal empire hidden beneath layers of respectability, corruption woven into the very fabric of one of Sweden's most powerful families. Blomkvist can no longer afford to take small steps. He must move boldly and with caution, knowing full well that the stakes are far higher than they seemed just days ago. As the investigation deepens, so does the sense of looming danger. Blomkvist finds himself increasingly vulnerable, caught in a web of secrets that have been carefully constructed over decades. The Vanger family is not just a wealthy and influential dynasty. It is a powerful force capable of destroying anyone who threatens to expose its darkest secrets. Blomkvist realizes he is not only up against the Vangers, he's up against a system of corruption and violence that stretches far beyond anything he could have anticipated. Blomkvist hasn't heard from Salander for 2 days. He knows she's been busy, and he understands why. She is digging deeper into Martin's financial records and the Vanger family's connections to organized crime. But he can't help but feel the weight of the uncertainty, the mounting pressure of the case. He knows Salander is the only one capable of finding the truth, and yet there's a growing sense of dread that the deeper they dig, the more dangerous it becomes. It's late in the evening when Blomkvist finally gets the call. Blomkvist, Salander's voice is steady but tinged with urgency. "I've found something big." Blomkvist's pulse quickens. "What is it?" "There's a connection between Martin and someone named Nils Bjurman." Blomkvist is taken aback. Nils Bjurman is a name he hasn't heard in a long time. He remembers Bjurman as a shady lawyer who had represented various figures in the Vanger family over the years. But he never thought his name would resurface in this investigation. "What's the connection?" Blomkvist asks, his mind racing. Bjurman was involved in a number of shady dealings with the Vangers. He's been linked to several financial transactions that point back to Martin, particularly with a group of individuals involved in human trafficking. "But that's not all," Salander continues. "I found evidence that links Bjurman to the mysterious disappearance of several women in the area. It seems like he may have played a role in Harriet's disappearance, or at least had knowledge of it. There's also a connection to Martin's father, Gottfried." Blomkvist is stunned. This new information opens up a whole new avenue of investigation. Martin Vanger and Nils Bjurman, both of them linked to organized crime and human trafficking. Both of them involved in the dark, hidden side of the Vanger family's wealth. But what role does Harriet play in all of this? And what's the connection between these men and her disappearance? Blomkvist feels a rush of urgency. They're getting closer to something monumental, something that could bring the Vanger family to its knees. But the danger is now palpable. The people involved in this web of corruption are ruthless, willing to go to any lengths to protect their secrets. Blomkvist realizes that, even with Salander's genius and tenacity on his side, they may be risking everything for the truth. He takes a deep breath, trying to steady his thoughts. "Keep digging, Lisbeth. We need to get solid evidence. If Bjurman's involved, we need to know how deep this goes." "I'm already on it," she replies. "I'll take a closer look at Bjurman's records. I'll also try to track down anyone who might know more about his dealings with the Vangers." Blomkvist hangs up, his mind whirling. He knows the investigation is on the verge of uncovering something truly horrific. The Vangers, Martin, Bjurman, they are all pieces of a much larger puzzle, and each piece leads to a new, more disturbing revelation. The further Blomkvist goes, the more he begins to question just how far the rot in the Vanger family goes, and who is involved in keeping it hidden. The next few days are filled with frantic research, late-night phone calls, and tireless searching through old records. Blomkvist and Salander are closing in on the truth, but with each step, the threat of exposure grows stronger. As the investigation nears its climax, Blomkvist can't shake the feeling that they are being watched, that the Vangers have somehow caught wind of their progress. He begins to suspect that they may be under surveillance, that the Vangers have eyes everywhere. The tension reaches a boiling point when Blomkvist receives a strange, anonymous warning. A note slipped under the door of his cabin, written in neat, precise handwriting. "Stop digging. It's too late to back out now." The message is clear. Someone, perhaps Martin or one of his allies, knows exactly what Blomkvist is up to. The Vangers have decided to make their move. The game is no longer about uncovering the truth, it's about survival. Blomkvist realizes that the people he's dealing with are not just powerful, they are deadly. They will stop at nothing to protect their secrets. Blomkvist has no choice but to push forward. The investigation has reached a critical point, and the truth is within their grasp. But it's clear that the closer they get to the heart of the Vanger family's criminal activities, the more dangerous it becomes. Blomkvist knows they are now playing a deadly game with no way out. If they succeed, they will expose the Vanger family for what it truly is. But if they fail, the consequences could be catastrophic. The sense of danger hangs heavy in the air, and Blomkvist realizes that they are now in a race against time. Every move they make could be their last, and every new discovery brings them closer to the truth, yet also deeper into the heart of a conspiracy that has been hidden for decades. As Blomkvist sits alone in his cabin, the weight of the case pressing down on him, he can't help but wonder, how much longer can they keep up the fight? How much longer before the Vangers close in on them? But one thing is certain, Blomkvist will not back down. The truth, no matter how dark or dangerous, must be exposed. The Vanger family's empire of corruption and violence will not stand, and Blomkvist is ready to face whatever it takes to bring the truth into the light. As the investigation reaches its final stages, Blomkvist and Salander find themselves standing at the precipice of a revelation that will shatter the foundations of the Vanger family's power. The truth is within their grasp, but the cost of uncovering it may be more than they are willing to pay. Blomkvist is acutely aware that they've pushed the limits of their safety, and the risks now outweigh the potential rewards. But he is also driven by an unshakable sense of justice and the need to expose the Vangers for who they truly are. The deeper they go, the more tangled the web becomes. The more Blomkvist uncovers, the more he realizes how much the Vanger family has buried. The deaths, the lies, the corruption, it's all interconnected in a way that only becomes clearer with each new piece of evidence. The Vangers have built their empire on a foundation of violence and secrets, carefully hidden for decades. But now, it is all about to come crashing down. Salander has uncovered a shocking and damning piece of evidence, a letter from Gottfried Vanger, Martin's father, that confirms everything they suspected about his involvement in human trafficking. But it's not just about Gottfried anymore. Martin is deeply entrenched in the same criminal activities, using his power within the family to cover up the dark deeds and protect their fortune. The real breakthrough, however, is that Blomkvist and Salander now have irrefutable proof linking Martin to Harriet's disappearance. Harriet's death was not an accident. It was part of a larger plan to keep the family's dark secrets buried. The final pieces of the puzzle fall into place as Blomkvist pieces together the timeline of events leading up to Harriet's disappearance. It turns out that Harriet had discovered something she shouldn't have, something that would have exposed the Vanger family's involvement in trafficking and organized crime. Harriet's desire for justice had made her a threat to the Vangers, and in the end, she had paid the ultimate price. Her murder was not just the result of a twisted family dynamic. It was the result of a system built on corruption, violence, and greed. Blomkvist's heart races as he reads the final set of documents that Salander has unearthed. His mind whirls as he processes the extent of the conspiracy. The Vangers were responsible for far more than anyone could have imagined. They had used their wealth and influence to shield themselves from justice, manipulating the system to protect their darkest secrets. But now, the truth was finally going to come out. Blomkvist's thoughts turned to the Vanger family's patriarch, Henrik Vanger, the elderly and now frail leader of the family. Throughout the investigation, Blomkvist had developed a certain sympathy for Henrik, who seemed to be a prisoner of his own family's legacy. Henrik had always been the one to talk about the past, about his family's history, and yet He had been complicit in covering up the family's criminal activities for years. Blomkvist knows that Henrik had his own role in the cover-up, but he can't shake the feeling that the old man is a victim too. Henrik, in his way, had been trapped by his own family's web of lies. In the end, Blomkvist knows that exposing the Vanger family will come with consequences. It's not just about Harriet anymore. It's about bringing down an entire criminal network that has had its roots in Sweden for decades. It's about destroying the Vanger family's empire of fear and corruption. But the danger is real. Martin will not go down without a fight, and neither will anyone else who has been involved in the family's dirty dealings. With everything in place, Blomkvist knows that the time has come. He can't wait any longer. The truth has to be revealed before the Vangers can strike back and silence them for good. He contacts his publisher, preparing to release the story that will blow the case wide open. But even as he makes the call, a knot forms in his stomach. He knows this will be the final push, an all-or-nothing move that will either expose the Vanger family or put them at risk of retaliation. As Blomkvist waits for the publication of the story, the anticipation is almost unbearable. He can feel the tension in the air, like a storm waiting to break. The case has consumed him, but now that the truth is finally ready to be exposed, he feels a strange sense of unease. The investigation has changed him. It's not just about the story anymore. It's about what the story will mean for all of them. What will happen to Salander, to him, when the truth finally comes to light? It's only a matter of time before the Vangers will know. But by then, Blomkvist and Salander will have done what they set out to do: expose the dark, hidden side of one of Sweden's most powerful families. When the story finally breaks, the response is immediate and explosive. The media erupts with shock, and the revelations about the Vangers' criminal activities send shockwaves through the public and the political establishment. The Vanger family is exposed for what they truly are: ruthless, violent, and corrupt. The story reveals the depth of the family's ties to organized crime, their exploitation of vulnerable individuals, and the lengths they went to in order to hide their criminal activities. The public is outraged, and the legal system is forced to take action. But for Blomkvist, the victory is bittersweet. The Vangers' empire has been exposed, but at a great personal cost. Blomkvist knows that the investigation has changed him. He's seen the ugly side of power and wealth, the way people will do anything to protect their secrets. But he also knows that he did the right thing. Harriet Vanger's death and the years of suffering that followed will not be forgotten. The truth has been revealed, and in the end, justice will prevail. Salander, too, feels a strange sense of closure. The investigation has taken her to the edge, revealing painful truths about herself along the way. But as the dust settles, she knows that the battle for justice has been won. The Vangers may have been powerful, but they were no match for the tenacity of Blomkvist and Salander. The story ends not with the silence of the Vanger family, but with the roar of truth being heard by the world. And so, the investigation concludes, not with a tidy resolution, but with a final, explosive revelation that shakes the foundations of everything the Vangers stood for. For Blomkvist and Salander, the battle is over. But the impact of their work will reverberate for years to come, leaving a legacy of justice in the face of corruption, and a reminder that even the darkest secrets cannot stay hidden forever. The unraveling of the Vanger family's dark secrets, orchestrated by Blomkvist and Salander, marks the end of an investigation that has pushed both of them to their limits. The story that has captivated readers and viewers alike reaches its conclusion, not with the tidy satisfaction of a neatly tied-up mystery, but with the lasting impact of truth exposed at a great personal cost. Blomkvist and Salander, who have spent months digging into the painful past of a family, ultimately do not just bring Harriet Vanger's killer to justice. They unearth an empire of corruption, violence, and human trafficking that has held its place in Swedish society for decades. Throughout the investigation, the Vangers were never just a family embroiled in a missing persons case. They were a symbol of the hidden undercurrents of power, wealth, and influence, a representation of the lengths to which some will go to protect their secrets, their money, and their legacy. The story of the girl with the dragon tattoo is not just the tale of a missing woman. It's an exploration of the shadows that lie beneath the surface of society's most powerful institutions, the systems that protect those at the top while enabling the suffering of the vulnerable. At its core, this book is about the intersection of justice and vengeance, the truth and the cost of revealing it. For Blomkvist, the pursuit of justice is always a personal mission, a journalist driven by his ideals, motivated by a desire to expose the truth, no matter how dangerous or inconvenient. He risks his life and reputation to dismantle the Vanger family's facade of respectability, knowing that the ultimate goal isn't just exposing one family's crimes, but shaking the very foundations of the corrupt systems that allowed such darkness to persist for so long. Lisbeth Salander, the story's fierce and enigmatic heroine, represents an entirely different kind of justice. Her journey is one of survival, revenge, and redemption. From the beginning, Salander has been a victim of the systems that are supposed to protect the vulnerable, abused by a guardian, overlooked by the authorities, and dismissed by society. Yet, through her exceptional intelligence and unyielding will, she refuses to be defined by her past. Her role in the investigation is not just about solving the case, it's about taking back control, confronting the demons that have shaped her, and claiming agency in a world that has tried to silence her. In the end, the revelation of the Vanger family's involvement in human trafficking and murder is as much a triumph for Salander as it is for Blomkvist. She has faced demons of her own, and in bringing the truth to light, she finds a measure of closure, albeit an imperfect one. There is no true justice for her own past, no simple resolution to the horrors she endured. But in exposing the Vangers, in revealing the network of people who abused their power, she reclaims her own sense of justice, a victory that is as much personal as it is societal. The true power of the girl with the dragon tattoo lies in its exploration of how secrets, power, and corruption intertwine, and how individuals, when they decide to fight for what is right, can challenge even the most entrenched systems. The book is a reminder of the power of the individual to fight back, to shine a light on the darkness that those in power would prefer to keep hidden. But it also asks the question, at what cost does this truth come? For Blomkvist and Salander, the pursuit of truth is not without its sacrifices. Their personal lives are irrevocably altered, their relationships tested, and their safety compromised. The story closes on a note of somber reflection, acknowledging that even the most righteous battles come with heavy consequences. The Vanger family, for all their wealth and power, cannot escape the truth. they are brought to their knees by the weight of the revelations. But even in the family's downfall, there is a sense of tragic inevitability. The Vangers, much like the institutions they represent, are the product of a system that rewards corruption and punishes those who dare to challenge it. Their empire of lies, manipulation, and violence is a reflection of a larger societal issue, a criticism of a world where power is often wielded without accountability. The story does not end with a traditional sense of closure. The Vanger family is exposed, but Blomkvist and Salander are left to grapple with the aftermath of their actions. The Vanger family's collapse may bring temporary satisfaction, but the scars left behind by the investigation on both Blomkvist and Salander are profound and lasting. It is a reminder that even the greatest victories come at a personal cost, and that some truths, once uncovered, can never be fully reconciled. In the end, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is a story about more than just solving a mystery. It's about the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unthinkable odds. It's about two people, Blomkvist and Salander, who refuse to let darkness go unchallenged, who refuse to let the powerful escape justice. It's about the fight for truth in a world where secrets are carefully guarded. And those who seek the truth often find themselves in harm's way. The legacy of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is one of defiance and hope, of uncovering the unspoken and exposing the hidden underbelly of society's most revered institutions. It leaves readers with a lingering question: what are we willing to sacrifice for the truth? And is it worth it when the cost may be everything we hold dear? In the final analysis, Stieg Larsson's novel is a poignant, thrilling reminder that the truth is not always a comfortable thing to hear, and that sometimes the quest for justice requires more than just courage. It requires a willingness to face the consequences, no matter how high the price. For Blomkvist and Salander, the price is steep, but in the end, they succeed in their mission to expose the darkness, to fight back against the systems of power and corruption, and to ensure that the story of Harriet Vanger and the hundreds like her is finally told.